Hey, y'all. In this archived episode of Her with Amena Brown, I am talking with Dr. Meredith Evans, a historian, archivist, 74th president of the Society of American Archivists, director of the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, and the first Black woman to helm a presidential library. Dr. Meredith shares why it's important to preserve and document history and how she navigates being first, only, different. Let's take a listen. Today, we have a very distinguished guest as a part of the podcast. Like, we had to have security bring us to her, okay? I'm happy to welcome to the podcast manager of cultural institutions, historian, archivist, librarian, 74th president of the Society of American Archivists, currently the director of the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum, also first African-American woman to direct a presidential library. I want you to welcome Dr. Meredith Evans to the podcast. Woo! Crowd goes wild. Crowd goes wild. Dr. Meredith, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Happy to be here.
Let me tell you how I met Dr. Meredith Evans. I got to give a special shout out to Austin Channing Brown, because Austin Channing Brown, hopefully y'all have listened to her episode on this here podcast as well. Hopefully you have read her book, I'm Still Here, because it's just everything. It's a whole book and a whole word all together. So Austin Channing Brown is also my friend. And I get a text from her a couple of weeks before her Atlanta book tour stop. And she was like, hey girl, so you're going to introduce me and Lecrae at our event. So I not only meet you, but you were on stage before me. And then by the time I met you, I was like, no. I think I should have gone first. And then Dr. Meredith should have introduced them, like the order. So Dr. Meredith graciously agreed to have coffee with me. We met up at a Starbucks and she basically fixed my life. She fixed my whole entire life over some chai. So I am just so honored to have you on the podcast. And we're not going to share most of what we talked about at coffee because it was for the coffee. But there's one thing that I asked Dr. Meredith to elaborate upon that she'll share with us. So I ask every guest, Dr. Meredith, an origin story question. You are an archivist, a librarian, a historian. What of that was reflected in your upbringing? Do you look back at your own story or family of origin in your life and think this was all leading me to the path to where I am now? Or do you look at your early life and think I ended up a totally different way than I thought I would have?
No, actually, I think I have lots of things that led me to this without me realizing it was going to lead me to this. I always kept things, very personal things, magazines, autograph books, papers, report cards, pictures. I kept things. And it was always organized. I didn't realize that until I moved and had to really move out. And I saw, what's in this box? And it's literally all the things that I had filed. It was my life in a box. Always loved history. Was infatuated with Oprah Winfrey for a minute because I just thought, look how you can expand people's minds through discussion of things. But we want people to really know where they've come from and what the future looks like. And you can't do that without some history. So I knew I wanted to do something along those lines. I just didn't know what it was. And then I went to school for history and I loved it. And I thought, I'm just going to go get my PhD. I'm going to do this. Life happens. And I ended up managing in restaurants.
Wow.
So my father passed away when I was a senior in college and he was a marketing VP. And I was always around corporate parents, but I was historian. But then I got this job and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then he passed away and I was like, grad school? I don't know. And then it was like, is this a job or is this a career? And I didn't know. And then I made it a career. And it was my first career. And I loved it. I loved managing people. I loved working with people. I felt like it was beyond giving advice. It was beyond that. It was really helping people better themselves. And then you could always see a tangible outcome. But then a while I got tired. I was falling asleep during holiday dinners and you never get a day off and you're never going to get a life. So they also was very clear, particularly in the South, that women were not going to be GMs in restaurants. And people of color were nothing but cooks and busboys. And so that was a double sword for me. And so I left. I have friends who are librarians and they were like, go to library school. And I thought, yeah, I can manage a library and be home by 6. I've been managing people for 8 years. I can do this in the library world and be closer to history. And then I discovered archives. I knew about them because I had worked in them. I didn't know what the profession looked like. And so I took classes and then I really realized that's what I want to do because people are writing history on the documents in these repositories, but there are voices missing in these repositories, right? I mean, even early century things in different European nations, it's legacy of that specific person who built that legacy. And so for me, the goal was, how do I build collections so people can see and hear the voices that have been left out for centuries? And that was always my goal while managing people, which was always fun. So it's sort of a double joy for me to do. The irony of this current position is that I wrote President Carter when I was way little and invited myself to the White House.
Come on, invited
for my
myself.
Birthday.
I
even sent a little $1 talking about this will help. And he wrote me back and sent my $1 back. And I have a little book on the White House. I still have that $1 and penny. I still have the note. And my letter is here in this collection.
Wow.
With these really crazy drawings. And I thought, look at that full circle. That all this time, these little things that I did as a kid that you just think are kids, everything comes back around in some kind of way. So my boldness and then my archiving and my history all wrapped in one in this one little letter, right?
Wow.
It's very cool.
That is really cool. Like to think little Dr. Meredith,
like little bit,
little was forecasting in a
who
way
knew?
What was going to come to you in your future. Wow.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, and it's good to have different support systems around you to help guide some thoughts. But when I look back now, I can see all the things that led me to doing the work that I do with the concerns and the heart that I have for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned the importance of an archivist going to Spelman. Taronda Spencer. Yeah, was our archivist. May she rest in peace.
Yes.
And I just remember being so curious every time she would spend time with us, come into class, or sometimes she just might be hanging out, you know, sometime at homecoming or whatever. And she would always have this her brain was this place that felt like she would just reach her hand in there and pull out this really interesting nugget of our history as Black women, the history of these women at our school that had come before us. And I just, whenever I see the word archivist, I think of her because as a writer, I love storytelling. And she told some of the best stories, but it was even better because they weren't fictional.
Right. They were true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were like actual accounts of history. And I never got a chance to go into the archives. I should do that now. It just felt like she was like some superhero who was...
Holly Smith, she's just as wonderful.
Yes, Holly, I got to come there and like actually go inside because it felt like, you know, Taronda would come out and talk with us and we'd be like, we don't know what she does when she goes back in there.
You know, there's something to be said for the HBCU community or women's colleges or just colleges that are specific to certain audiences because they play on that legacy that they have, right? And so you learn so much, but you always know the foundation which you're standing on.
Yeah.
I've worked a lot of places. And the bigger the university or the more public the university, the less you hear about the history and the legacy of the people that have gone before. I'm a Clark Atlanta grad. And so I do miss that part of college that, you know, I call it old school HBCU where we still had dorm mothers and we had a curfew and people were like, why would you want to go through that? And I said, but it did teach us, it taught men how to treat us and it taught us what to expect. Right. So there was something to be said for those things. And then to know the women and men that had come before me. I come from a Clark Atlanta family. My mother had gone, my aunt had gone. We meet the elders when we're at homecoming and just seeing not just the growth of the institution, but seeing how difficult it was for them to come through and how they paved the way for us.
Yeah.
I hate that we lose that.
Yeah.
Even if you're not Greek or Greek, when they painted over the benches and things like that, that we do to take away the people who built the place, it's so hurtful.
Yeah.
And because then the kids today think that they're doing everything on their own.
Right.
And that they're just in school to get a degree. Or this is where they had to go because that's where their parents went. Or this is what got paid for. And not realizing the joy of being in a room full of women or a room full of African Americans and being able to say in an academic setting, whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in predominant institutions, you're very cautious, whether you realize it or not, you're very cautious of what you say and from what perspective you say it
Right.
from.
That's right.
But in these more small liberal arts schools or an HBCU or a women's college, you have that comfort. And then the discomfort is you're dealing with people who look like you, act like you, talk like you, who are as smart as you. And that's a harsh realization for you.
Woo,
right?
Isn't it?
Because
Isn't
you've been
it?
the only one.
Mhm.
And then you get into this environment where you realize, oh, there's more. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm not the only one this time.
Mhm,
Right?
mhm.
It's fascinating. It's crazy. You feel real uncomfortable at first and then you're embracing it.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow. And then I look at all my sisters and brothers now from Clark and Morehouse and Morris Brown and
Yes. And Morris
Spelman
Brown.
who are
Yes.
lawyers and doctors and restaurant owners. And we remember that camaraderie and that strength that we gave each other.
Mhm.
It's just, that's a blessing.
That was totally my experience coming to Spelman. It was like I was a big fish in my little pond from
Mhm.
home, you know?
Yep.
So I was used to being the only person that had been president of the such and such in high school and started the this and that in high
Mhm.
school. And I remember that first year being such a rude awakening.
Surprise.
Being like, I
was
don't know
too.
about that because I was president. Yeah. And then
Mhm.
hearing that person go, oh yeah, me too. And I
Mhm.
also started this nonprofit when I was 16 because, and then I also started volunteering for the, I was like,
Exactly.
wait a second, wait.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting because I'm a federal employee now. And I remember I tell this story how I got off the FBI list and I didn't even know I was on it. And the reason I was on it is because in high school, I was really active in Amnesty International and in the apartheid movement. I got to actually see Nelson Mandela and I had a really interesting time. And so when I got to college, I guess I got quiet and all of a sudden I got this weird letter, which I need to look for. I'm pretty sure I have it somewhere that was like, you know, just wanted to let you know that we are no longer looking at these lists and you are one of the people named. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And then I think about archiving and I think about all the documents that we suppress or we don't want people to see. And truth is real. And I think over time, people need to be able to see how things came about.
Yeah.
I miss print. I get the digital, it's easy, but I miss print. I miss the multiple memos where you had to write the change on the memo.
Right.
Or somebody had to retype the memo or
And the CC.
or put on the CC or the V1, V2, or people had to sign off. So if you didn't sign off, that means you didn't really read it. I miss that ability to track. It's a lot more difficult in the digital world, but I think about those days that shape how I think now. I think about my high school yearbook. I went to a Quaker school. Half one page is like Ephesians and the other page is Malcolm X.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay. I was down.
We love a combination.
I was like, all right. It brings new meaning to the things my sister used to say to me now. My sister's older. Now I get why she was concerned. I think she thought I was just going to march forever, get my fro, by any means necessary.
Can you talk about the importance of archiving and the importance of documenting our history? I remember in my upbringing in a Black church, in my Black college upbringing, we talked a lot about our oral history and what was important about that it was important for us to hear the stories told from our elders. And I love about your work and the work of other Black archivists that a part of that is also the documentation of our history. Why are both of those things important for us?
So first, archiving is documenting in any format. It really is. It's really trying to put together a collection of materials that can explain or speak to a person's life, an organization, an institution, a family over time. And that's what you want to see. You hate to see the gaps. I love oral tradition. And I hate that we as a people of color have to conform to the written word only because that's not our heritage. I'd love to maintain both. I advocate for the print because if we don't, we get left out. And until we are in places of power or places of position or the people writing the narratives that is accepted by the masses, then we will continue to be left out. And so what I like to do in an archive setting is build collections, which means collecting papers, collecting pictures, collecting oral traditions from different groups of people that have had an impact on that community, that society, whatever it may be, that organization. Even if it's sharing everyday life, I think that's the other piece that we miss You can look at a Civil War ledger and you can see the buying and selling of materials, slaves, the land, who owned what land, what part of the land. It's all in writing these big ledgers, right? What do we have now? How do we know where our families came from, what land they owned, what apartment they had? How do we know that? For us, sometimes it's oral. Is that proof, quote unquote? The document's the proof. Who has the deed to grandmama's house, right? Who knows what those taxes are? And when Aunt Maybelline passes, who's going to take that on? And so when we lose touch with family, we lose the story of the oral tradition, but we also lose the print. And so I'm always challenged by that. My original research was churches, Black churches. I love my Black churches, particularly at the times where we were the epicenter of community. We were the social services place, right?
Yeah. Yep.
We were the builders of banks and insurance and schools for our people. Whether we were segregated or integrated, we were building things to better our community. Very much like the Jewish community has the Hillel, and they still have a Hillel. And they're very clear that this is a place for our children and our families to grow and be one. I don't know why we don't continue that tradition in any culture. African Americans, we tend to we like to assimilate and be we're all American. And I get that. But we have some really important cultural things that we need to maintain in our communities that we don't. So if we're not going to continue to tell the stories, whether we lose contact with family or not, or whatever the reason may be, then where are the documents? Where are the photographs? Where are the pieces? I want my son to be able to see his great-great-grandparents, and we only have a few pictures, and those are now copies, right? Who has those originals?
Right.
I want to be able to say, I know who my great-great-great-grandfather's name is. Not sure I can, right? Because the stories don't continue down and there's no writing. There's no family Bible or no family tree written. There's no letter. And that's where we stop learning about ourselves. In the medical profession, they say, oh, what's your family history in terms of health-wise? But I would just ask you, what's your family history? And if you can't go past 2 generations, then do you really know who you are?
Right.
The best thing about those shows, like the Henry Louis Gates shows and the genealogy shows out there, is watching him take people all the way back. Because people think they know and they don't know.
Right.
And, of course, our community is always like, we're part Native American, we're part this. And then he finds out and people find out that they're not.
That's what happened to my family, honey. They told us my grandfather's mother was Cherokee as the day is long. And I said, honey, I looked it up.
Yeah, we're not,
That's just a biracial. That's not Native American. We love it, but that's not.
Your hair's straight because some Irish master went through. And it's okay. Let's embrace that. We can forgive. We can heal.
Right.
But recognize it for what it is. We may not have that in paper, but we can have that in oral tradition. And then we can look and see.
Yeah.
There's some census things you can look for our heritage. I mean, I think the DNA testing is great. That's really great. There's a lot of them out there now. But do you take the time to go back to the census and the slave ledgers to try to trace your heritage?
Yeah.
So every time I pass through a town that says Whitaker, which is my mother's maiden name, I'm thinking, we got some cousins out here somewhere. I'm sure that's a slave name. I get that. But there was probably 100 of us.
Right.
So it'd be interesting to see. So for me, archiving is about having that combination of both. It's interesting. Lonnie Bunch, who's the director of the Museum on the Mall for African Americans, and we had this whole conversation on a panel discussion because people were like, well, you never know. People's memories are bad and the memory changes the history and they don't always know. There's some truth to that memory.
Yeah.
Whether it's exaggerated or not, we'll never know that. But if it's been passed down multiple times through multiple generations, there's some truth to that. And we should never say, well, the paper says this, so your story is false.
Right. Because there could be many reasons why the paper would say a different thing from the story.
And did we write the paper?
Yeah.
Probably not. So there's truth to those stories. I would never negate that. We like to use print as evidence. But in our community and as people of color, we just can't. That's not the only thing we can use.
Can you talk a little bit about your research in archiving in Black church settings? And I'm personally curious about it because my great-grandfather was a bishop in Pentecostal Holiness Church in North Carolina. So we were able to go back to the original church building and see my great-grandfather and my grandfather and his brothers. They had a business where they built church furniture. So we were able to go back to this original church building where he pastored. And of course, all those intricate pulpits and in remembrance of me tables. I mean, it's heavy stuff. So when churches would move from that building, they would leave the
stuff.
furniture because they were like, what can we do with this? But to be able to go back into that building and see that original furniture that, my ancestors had built was so wonderful. And I was trying to call and find out. I've seen pictures of the choir in the choir stand, but all those things are scattered. And now the original church that was in that building is in a new place. So I'm just curious to know, in your research, how are many Black churches archiving?
They're not. Because nobody knows how to do it and what to do. So I did a case study on 4 churches in Atlanta for my dissertation. I found deeds to the church in people's trunks of their car, or they'd have a 3rd bedroom in their house with stuff.
Wow.
Or the church would have things in trash bags, not knowing what to do with it. Every new pastor you clean out, not knowing what things are. Then there's places that create small little museums, or they keep some records. I think people don't know what to do, which is always scary because then you lose stuff.
Right.
And you don't have to keep it all. When I go through a collection, 90% of it I don't keep, average, give or take. But I am trained to know what to keep. And in a church setting, particularly older churches, you have to keep some stuff.
Yeah.
You have to keep some minutes. You don't have to keep every program. You can keep the sick and shut-in list. That's always useful. But you don't have to keep the whole program because everybody wrote the same thing on the program. That's not useful. What's useful is the sick and shut-in, because you can see people's growth or healing or not healing, right? Or the christenings. So you can see when people were christened. I mean, 50, 60 years ago, people might not know their birthday, but they knew when they were baptized, and that's what they would use for their birthday. So there's some things that you have to keep. There's these letters that when people went to war, they would send their dues back to the church, right?
Interesting.
And that's huge to see, Billy at 18 in Vietnam or World War II committed to the church.
Yeah.
Say hi to mama, or use this to take care and buy new books or buy a Bible. That's where people's heart were. And that's important to keep. But you wouldn't know that if you don't look at what you have.
Right.
And I think there's photographs. You can see photographs of the old community, the land. That's really important in places like Atlanta, where we change street names like we pour a cup of water. We change street names. We rebuild on stuff. We change names. Old Fourth Ward. It's historic Fourth Ward. There was a neighborhood there before y'all came back in there. It's not old. Right. It's historic.
Right.
Okay. But if you had pictures from the church picnics, right? Or when they went witnessing, or when the choir sang outside, you can see what that street corner looked like before it became whatever the new name is now, right? Or you could see where the first church started underneath the condos where it is now. I love the churches that still have small cemeteries.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even if people are built on top of people, it doesn't matter. Those stones tell you who they are.
Yeah.
And then you can get a better sense of who's here and why, and the babies. It's just, those are tangible things churches need to maintain that financially they can't, or they get a church historian who's not clear what to do, or a new person comes in and wants to throw things away.
Right.
You have to keep some things. And if the church doesn't feel comfortable, then you can give it to someplace that will.
Right.
And that could be a public library. It could be another special collections or a historical society. People will take some things because they want to know who the community was before it is what it is now.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, churches, because there's generations of people there. And people have memory. But if you don't have that younger generation in the church, they don't care. They don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And if you're a Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter person, you don't care about the history. But when it comes down to the funerals, or you get back in the church and you want to go there, and then you find out that 3 generations of your family have been at that church, or they split and went to this one, having some records or pictures or something is so useful.
Yeah.
You'll even catch good gems. What's the big thing? What does every politician do to this day? Every politician, when they want the Black vote, what do?
They go right to the church.
Roll up to the church, right?
Go right to the church.
State representative so-and-so. I'm a candidate for
greetings.
such and such. Bring greeting, right. You ain't never stepped foot in here. You don't even like to go to the store over here, but you're going to come up in this church and be known. Clap your hand a little, way, a little sway. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I think, this church in Durham, North Carolina, White Rock Baptist Church, they had taken minutes on the back of insurance forms.
Wow.
But it's one of the only Black insurance companies. That's history in itself. Just the paper itself was history.
Yes.
They had a flyer that King was coming. I never found pictures, but they had this whole flyer about Martin Luther King Jr. coming to their church. And I thought, see, this is the kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I had a little fascination with Alex Haley as a child because I, obviously read through Roots. I watched the original, series when it came out. I watched I don't know what you would call this new one. I'm like, is it updated? Is it, I don't know, an additional series that came out?
That's a good way to put it. Additional.
It's an additional series that came out and I watched that. And one of the things that I've learned too, like my parents and grandparents grew up in a very small town in North Carolina. So there were certain things that digitally I got to where I got certain information. And then after that, it's like, well, now you got to go inside this office in here, to find this information. But to your point, I went back to their hometown. I had one day. It was a Saturday, so I couldn't even get into like the courthouse or anything like that. So I just had my great grandfather's name and we went through like the microfiche.
Nice.
Of like the Black newspaper that they'd had at that time. And I found this article about him and it listed his siblings' names. And that's when I realized his mother had remarried.
Wow.
And so his name was listed with his stepfather's last name, which is why we lost him.
Wow.
So then it was like that little thing opened up all this other stuff. Yeah. Just knowing that, and my grandmother, to your point about the elders and what they remember, my grandmother sometimes would remember these, I remember so-and-so used to have a store on such and such street, and at first you're like, is it important that she remembers that? But then you're like, well, she's giving me some place and location.
Right
there.
Exactly.
That little thing might lead me to another thing and finding more about our family,
It blows my mind when they build buildings on something and they're like, oh, we just realized that this was an Indian burial ground, or we didn't know that this was this. And I thought, did anybody look at anything before you just saw the vacant lot and cleared it? In St. Louis, they built the highway right between Black cemetery.
Wow.
And no one's the wiser until people started taking pictures and showing that actually Grandmama Mabel's buried on this left side of this highway and her husband's on the other side because you
put the highway right in the middle. Wow.
It's things like that I think, I can't say it enough. Historic Fourth Ward. It bothers me that we want to erase foundations of things that were there. Whether you liked it or not is not the point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for bringing some more vibrancy to a neighborhood, I guess, but honor it. Don't forget about it.
Yeah.
Right? Don't forget about it.
Forget its origins and forget the layers of its history.
That. Yeah. Because it's not fair. Mm-hmm. It's not fair to people who want to come back and see it and then see a skyscraper.
A word today. You've had a chance in your career to participate in curating and archiving some amazing collections of work. Do you have 2 or 3 highlights in your career that you would say you look back on those moments and feel really proud to have been a part of archiving some of that history?
I've got one from every institution.
Okay.
I don't work because I have to. I work because I like to.
Yeah.
At the Woodruff Library in the Atlanta University Center, I was there when they brought in the King papers.
Wow.
And it was my job to work with the books. Fascinating. There's 2 favorite things out of that collection for me. Is one of the books, Dr. King had written the grocery list in the back of the book. I guess he thought it was a grocery list on paper he could take with him, but it was literally in the back of the book. It was like oranges, don't forget the milk. It was I was just like, oh, see, normal, human.
Yeah.
My other favorite thing from that collection is there are these postcards from Malcolm X when he was on the Hajj to King. Wow. And he sends enough and he changes his name each time till the end.
Wow.
And it's just the favorite thing in that collection for me is to watch his transformation religiously and just as a man and as a person. And I always argue because they saw more eye to eye than people think.
Right,
and because people look at the media, they just assume that this is real, but they were very much in tune. And it's interesting because I had a conversation with my son who's 9. He read a Malcolm X book. He said Malcolm X was troubled, had a troublesome childhood, and he was violent. And I was like, well, honey, if you saw your father get killed in the way in which he saw it,
right,
you might want to bear some arms too, which is legal.
Well,
I said, you have the right to defend because he doesn't want that to happen to his family or somebody else close to him. And he said, oh. And so helping him see and then showing him the strength and the faith that he had. He was like, he's a lot like King. I said, yeah. So they both had the same agendas in many ways.
Yeah.
And King's more militant than people want to lead on.
That
so
part with your misplaced quotes on Dr. King Day. Mm-hmm.
And then I went to George Washington University in DC, where we got the National Education Association collection. But my favorite is Robert Gibson, who was a Black expatriate in the literary world. And he was big on Cuba and communism and Amira Baraka. He just fabulous writer and living to this day. That was just a joy to get that collection. It was just something so different. Charlotte, I started a LGBTQ collection there in a very different way. Normally, archivists, we clean out basements and attics and we convince you your things are worthy. In this instance, I had a friend who worked in student affairs who was part of the community who sought out materials for me and brought them to me and was like, look, we should keep this, right?
Wow.
And that's how the collection started. And it's fabulous. It turns out that Charlotte had a very old LGBTQ community, that they had women's clinics that actually served as safe spaces. They almost had a very similar to a African-American Green Book. They had that in Charlotte for where you could stay.
Wow.
Safely. The quilt, AIDS quilts. And I mean, it's just really fascinating. Drag, some of the best drag in Charlotte. I mean, it was just really a fun collection, and it was great to see the community heal, because it turns out that there were still two prides, Black and white, and also just a place for people within their own community to get together and say, look at our stuff, because everybody's hesitant to give their things to a predominant institution or something that seems white male dominated. But I think it was the point that here your history is going to be saved and safe. And here you can commune if you need to. I think was really important, and was an important shift for Charlotte at the university to be welcoming to all, because you can't stay a strong academic institution if you're not going to be welcoming to all.
Right.
And then it was St. Louis.
Yes.
I worked at WashU, and I actually interviewed right after Ferguson and still took the job. The killing of Michael Brown was rough, and I knew about it. We talked about it during my interview, but I took it. And strangely enough, St. Louis is one of my favorite cities to have lived in. It's super quaint. You don't go into the county. Sorry, people from St. Louis, but it's great. It's a great town. But documenting Ferguson was really important to me. It was a group of us, librarians and archivists and some faculty members. And our intention was to really stay objective. It really, really was. The killing of Michael Brown was less than 10 miles away from the university. We had staff and employees that had lived there. And, it was just a really trying time. The verdict was announced 2 blocks from my other office. I mean, it was really difficult. But our deal was, how do we archive things in real time? How do we maximize this digital technology and the cell phone technology? How do we make those things work in a way that we can control the narrative of the people? Because when Michael Brown was killed, what started as a local issue became a global issue.
Right.
And people came from around the world, really, to this little bitty neighborhood trying to help, or not, right? And then when the media got wind, it was media centric. And so what about the people who live and work there? Where's their story? Because what you see on CNN is not their story. That's some news person coming in because they saw this tweet. I also think people don't understand the importance of Twitter. Twitter in that instance was the organizing. So here 10 years earlier, I looked at LCLC organizing papers, keep your head down. If the water comes, turn to the right. And, they had all these nonviolent steps, but it was all typed out. And this is what they handed you and they trained you on it. Here we had Twitter.
Right.
And in Twitter, people were sharing, this is what you do if you get tear gassed. People from other countries.
Wow.
Were sharing with the activists on the ground in St. Louis what to do if you get tear gassed. It was organizing points. It was, here's a link to a GoFundMe because we need money because we're going to buy lunch meat and sandwiches and make lunch for these babies who can't go to school. That was how they communicated. It wasn't just #Ferguson. It was #Ferguson because it's working and helping and getting people organized to do some things.
Yeah.
So trying to capture all of that digitally was really important. We did reach out to Darren Wilson's contingencies and supporters and didn't get very far. We did ask archives to manage those websites, like kind of gather as much websites as possible. So I think the Facebook's page is back in the Wayfinder and things like that. So you can see all sides. People uploaded court documents and verdicts. People uploaded zines. Wow. There's a whole Black women zine in that system that talks about Black women who were killed by the police. People uploaded music that they created. People took pictures of the murals and they would take pictures of the same wall over and over again because people would paint over it and paint something else. So there's a record of that.
Interesting.
It's not always easy to search, but it was really important it's captured. And it's not captured by the media. It's actually real time. We asked people, if you're out there and you want to upload it in a safe space, here you go. And they did. So I think that's a proud moment. I try to bring the marginalized communities or the hidden voices to life at repositories that don't normally do that.
Yeah.
They collect whoever gives them the stuff. And it's usually somebody with money or somebody who's part of the organization or the institution. And I get it. If you're not of that community, it may be hard to get that material, but at least we're at a point in our profession where people are going to try. 20, 30 years ago, nobody was even trying. You know, I think back to that Hidden Figures movie. And as an archivist, all I can think about is nobody described anything well enough to know that this woman was Black.
Right.
And that she had accomplished all these things. From an archivist perspective, I mean, my mind is like blown. Like, did they think she was passing? Because she clearly went to the colored restroom.
Walked so far.
How did we miss this?
Yeah.
How did the school that allowed the other woman to go to school miss this? As an archivist, those are the things I'm fascinated by. And I'm always like, if I could dig up those things. And then here, this is a permanent collection and it's federal and it's records of the government, but it's White House records from Carter's administration. And Carter did appoint the most people of color and women in positions of any president.
Wow.
So it's fascinating to see attorney generals and appellate court people and district court people, women or people of color that he appointed or put in these positions. Eric Holder was a lawyer way, way, way back in the day.
Wow.
In the Carter administration.
Wow.
Ruth Ginsburg became appellate court in DC and district court under the Carter administration.
Interesting.
And so you look at these things and you're like, huh. And here is a man who didn't know King Jr. He knew Daddy King.
Interesting.
Because this is the South.
Right.
Right? His life is fascinating and the materials here are fascinating. It has a lot of federal speak to it, but then it's also the generation that wrote notes. So when you can catch that document where he wrote notes or Mrs. Carter wrote notes or somebody in the administration wrote notes, that's a gem.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, this is what I was thinking. I took notes on this piece of paper and it's still in here. And you can see how decisions were made and discussions were done. That's just a joy.
Wow. I am just overwhelmed at how amazing the work is that you've been able to do. And even hearing the collection from Ferguson and thinking about, like, when we say the word history, we're thinking a lot of the time that those are times so far gone, which that history is important, but we are living in a moment that is also history and the ability to capture that. Wow.
I mean, there's a reason why people came up with Snapchat, right? Because they don't want to be remembered or they want their privacy. So there's a thin line.
Sure.
But I think about what is our life going to be like 10 years from now? You know, I'm beating myself up every day because I have 2 more Shutterfly books to make. I try to make photo books for my son. I only have 1 baby to 3. I have to do 3 to 6 and 6 to 9. That's my commitment because they're all on my hard drive or my phone or my whatever. And I want my son to have pictures of himself. I have 2 big photo albums of my life. You know, it stops at about college and then there's a wedding book, right? But I want him to have that because what is he going to show his kids?
Right.
I have friends that have nothing. They don't have their military uniforms anymore. They don't have any photographs. They don't have anything. And they think that's okay. And I'm thinking that's not okay. You're not passing anything down. I have love letters from this dude in college and I'm keeping them.
I know that's right.
I even found a picture and I was like, oh, I did good.
You gotta keep record of that.
You know
That's right.
I'm just, I had a life. I think it's important to remember that just the few events that you know about me is not my life.
Yeah.
I have a life.
Yeah.
I have hair changes and clothes changes and music changes and relationship changes. And that is important to show my son and whoever he's with in the end, or my grandkids, so that they can see.
Mm-hmm.
My mother's like, oh, you're going to burn my journals. My mother was director of human resources for a major corporation. I'm not burning nothing. I'm about to flip through those suckers and be like, oh, that happened to me. This is how she handled that. Awesome.
Yeah.
My dad died at 50. I never got to hear what it's like. He went from New York City, from a community college, to Western Michigan, where if you look through that yearbook in 1963, it was like him and my godfather. Wow. I would love to sit and talk to my dad and say, what was that like?
Right.
To be in that cold state of Michigan as a city boy, born and raised in New York City. Like, what was that like?
Right.
And I don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
I have no letter correspondence from him to his parents, or no journal from him. So I really don't know. And that's one of my little goals, is to kind of go up there and see what you have on my dad, and then find some people who might have known him and say, what was my dad like then?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because it's historic. He was in the petroleum program.
Huh.
So my dad did a degree in community college and joined this petroleum thing, and he stuck with it, and he became Shell Oil employee. And he stayed a Shell Oil employee from this petroleum program. That's who sponsored him. He could have gone to Exxon or Mobil, and he stayed at Shell. And he did that all the way up and decided to go corporate. He could have owned gas stations. He chose not. He chose the office. And he ended up doing marketing. My dad did the Auto Club books.
Huh.
Right. So as I look at this Shell Oil truck I just gave my son the other night, I'm sitting here going, this truck is history. Her grandfather created this to kind of get the brand out, but also for you to play with. You know what I mean? But I have nothing written. These are the stories and what I remember him telling me, but I don't have anything writing.
Right.
But does that mean it's not true? No.
You are the first African-American woman to helm a presidential library, which is a huge deal.
And the youngest, I think. No.
Come on. Get all the accolades. We need all the accolades to come together right now.
Yeah.
So Shonda Rhimes talks about, in her book, Year of Yes, talks about being first or being only or being different, which I'm sure you have experienced varying degrees of this in the different positions that you've helmed.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about, as marginalized people, what are some good, healthy ways to navigate being the first, being the only, being the different?
Have a support system and have a belief in something. It's tiring, and it's okay to be fatigued, but it's tiring to walk in a room and be the only one.
Yeah.
Particularly in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. I think the first few meetings I went to, I believe in colors. So I had my maroon jacket on and some bright colored shirt, and I walk into this room, a sea of navy suits. And I thought, oh, I really stand out now. Be comfortable in your skin, but have that support system, because you will get fatigued and sometimes you don't even realize it. I also think it's a teachable moment. It's true what they say, the older you get, the less you're willing to deal with some things. It's not that you're not tolerant. I have good days and bad days. Like, I don't mind talking about my hair. I don't. But then there's days I kind of feel like you should just Google it. Just like,
this information is available to you. It's available.
Yeah. I think my biggest issue is that I still see things in multiple ways.
Mm-hmm.
I see things as a woman. I see things as a person of color who's a woman, as an academic, as a mom. And the reason I think like that's because people always try to put me in a box that I don't fit in. I don't fit in your box. Particularly in the South. Yes, I was married when I had my son. Yes, I'm actually an executive. Why am I justifying my existence? Just embrace who I am and enjoy that. My other big issue right now is being talked over.
Just got mad just hearing you say that. Got mad.
I love me some men, but I'm here, I'm in the room, and I'm intelligent, and I run this place.
Yep.
Please stop looking past me talking to John, because that's who you're most comfortable with, and then try to act like that's respectful to me. It's not. Mm-hmm. And so I try not to tolerate that. I have very convenient, special ways of escorting people out or changing topics or allowing people to be a little more comfortable and forthright. But the talking over is just as bad as the mansplaining.
Oh, dear.
You're in my space.
Mm-hmm.
Respect me for just that.
Yep.
And if you can't, then don't come.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. We can do stuff in writing till you get over it. I can't, I don't see why we should be subjected to that.
Mm-hmm.
Or why you think I'm not going to intervene and say something.
That part.
I think they always think I'm not going to speak. I'm the director of the Carter Presidential Library and Museum, and you're in my house.
Mm-hmm. A word.
And you brought me no gift. So you should just then sit and let's have a dialogue about whatever we're supposed to have a dialogue on, and then you can leave.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't want that conversation, just send me a note, email, and we'll dialogue that way. Because I'm very comfortable in my skin. I'm sorry you are not comfortable in yours.
A word today. There's an offering if you also want to give the offering for that word. Mm-hmm.
It is one of those things. I've learned how to be quiet. I've learned when to speak. I've learned when to share some things in a different way. But I refuse to not stay true to myself.
Yeah.
And I'm an extrovert in a very introverted profession. And I'm in a high level. And I don't feel the need to suppress who I am for your comfort all the time. I can be loud. I can be boisterous. I can be fun. But I do know what I'm doing. And I'm happy to hear ideas. I'm happy to give you resources to do your ideas. But be respectful.
Yeah. I'm going to take that home. Y'all might have to rewind that and replay that because that was good. When we went to coffee, just the one coffee tip y'all going to get here, because the rest of it is just only for coffee when me and Dr. Meredith sitting there. It don't make the podcast, okay? So just the one little tip y'all get. When we were at coffee, you said something really profound to me. You talked about the different institutions that you've had an opportunity to partner with, work with, all these different junctures of your career. And you talked about how you don't make a career move if it's not a move up. You said you don't make lateral career moves. And when you said that, I got in my car and just, reflected upon my own career. And, I have had moments where I was thinking about a lateral move. I was thinking about surviving. I wasn't thinking about the trajectory of where I could go or where I wanted to go. Can you talk more about that and about that thought process?
I mean, if it's lateral, that means it's a job to you. It's a check. It pays the bills. If it's a career and you aspire to be more, do more in that area that you're working in, then it can't be a lateral move. And if it is a lateral move, once you get there, make it so it's not. And I think that's the key. And I will say this, as I find for women, we tend to sabotage ourselves and convince ourselves that we're not worthy or capable of. And that's not true. And I think we feel like we should manage like men. And that's not true.
Yeah.
We have a different take on things. I won't go as far as saying we're nurturing. That's not what it is. But we do see things in a more complex way. We do multitask differently. We just respond to things differently. But trying to act like John does not help. However, I will say, I've looked at a lot of resumes. And so my rule is if you've read it, you've touched it, you've done it. And that's really hard for women. I don't know if I can explain that, or I don't know if I've really done that. I look at more resumes where you talk to the person and they were a member of the team, but they wrote team lead, right? Or they said they led. And really you took notes. Like, let's not play this game. So each move I make, I look for certain things in jobs too. I want to be in the right environment. I like to live 15 minutes from a grocery store. I like to be on public transportation when I want to. I like to be near a movie theater. There's certain things that I like near me. So I look for places like this. But when I get the job, I look for communities of people too. Are you passionate about your work? Can I help you become passionate about your work? Are you just here because they put you in this department? Your whole family works at the school. And so everybody, this is what you're going to do. I look at that. If it's more passionate people, then I'm just going to come to work. I'm more likely to take the more passionate one. Pay is not everything. So I look for places where I make the money that will keep my lifestyle.
Right.
But really, it's more about, can I come into work every day and enjoy it?
Because if you're getting paid this amount and you hate what you do,
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What's your work environment got to look like? I've made sacrifices along the way, but as I move up, I'm thinking, I don't think I want to be in a cubicle anymore. And if I do, can I pick my cube mate? Right? Those are the things you have to think about. So if I take a pay cut, do I have positions I can hire? Or am I going to be able to live in an area that I want to live in? Or will there be a bonus structure or a way for me to do some consulting on the side? I look at ways to do things to support the things that I want, but I also sacrifice. And so when you make these moves, it could be a title change. So it could be a lateral move on paper. By the time you finish negotiating, your title's different.
Yeah.
Or your pay is different. Or your office is different. Something has changed. And then it's not lateral.
Yeah.
And then you got to make sure that people are really receptive. Part of being interviewed is you interviewing them.
Yep.
You'll know if the people you have to work with or your boss or whoever is not the right fit. And that's not going to change. So you have to be willing to walk away. And if you're not willing to walk away, then you set yourself up to be unhappy.
Yeah.
Particularly when you go places where you don't have support. You know, DC was great. Charlotte was hard. I didn't really have people close, but I built community there and I loved it. St. Louis wasn't close. It was a plane ride away. But I found community in St. Louis and really great work. And St. Louis is a really great town. It's got really cool neighborhoods. It was like old New York. You know, New York has Disney and Target now. You know, St. Louis,
true.
there were still people making pasta. There were still pasta shops, you know?
Wow.
Which is, you know, when you go up in New York, they had that. We don't have that now. You go to Olive Garden or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, St. Louis still had that. I mean, it was just great. Yeah, I think you have to really think about what you're trying to do and where you want to go.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you want to stay lateral, but then you have to either weather the storms where you are or reinvent yourself. And
I feel like you're getting in my business now, Dr. Meredith. You're in my business now.
Well, because the older we get, the harder it is to reinvent.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't retire anytime soon. I have a 9-year-old. But I can enjoy my work because if I'm not enjoying it, it affects him. It affects those around me. It affects my staff. And so I want to be happy, or it's just a job. And if it's just a job, it's just a check. And that can go away. If you want to do just enough, then do just enough, but let people know that. And then if a new leader comes in and says, we're going here, if you don't jump on that train, I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
If you don't get on the train, you'll be miserable. That person will be miserable, or they'll make other people miserable. And then the whole organization is miserable and we're all slowed down. And it doesn't have to come to that. Honesty goes far. My best employees are the ones that are like, Dr. E, all I want to do is this. I'm not doing anything else. I don't care what you say. And I'm like, you know what? Thank you for your honesty.
Mm-hmm. Now I know.
Thank you. But I do need you to smile in a meeting. That's all I need you to do. You just kick butt in this area. I will try to leave. There might be 1 or 2 times I will ask you to do something because I really need it done because this is where we're moving. Mm-hmm. And I need you to be able to agree to that because you don't want them to sour the pot.
Yeah.
Because once they do that, it makes it hard for everybody.
Yep. That's so true.
It is.
Big thanks to Dr. Meredith Evans for schooling us on so many things. You can check out Dr. Meredith's work with the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum at cartercenter.org. This week's edition of Give Her a Crown, I want to shout out Dr. Jessica B. Harris. Dr. Harris is an expert on the food and foodways of the African diaspora and has written 12 books cataloging this history. Her most recent book is a memoir called My Soul Looks Back. If you watched High on the Hog on Netflix, and if you haven't, you should because it's amazing. High on the Hog was based on Dr. Harris's book of the same name. In this episode, Dr. Meredith Evans reminded us that it's important to keep archives of history for ourselves and for future generations to come. So thank you, Dr. Jessica B. Harris, for keeping an archive of Black history, innovation, and creativity. Dr. Jessica B. Harris, give her a crown. Her with Amena Brown is produced by Matt Owen for Soul Graffiti Productions as a part of the Seneca Women Podcast Network in partnership with iHeartRadio. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.